I'm Claire Parker.
And I'm Ashley Hamilton. And this is Celebrity Memoir Book Club, the podcast where we talk to you like we're just two strangers who met on an airplane, except for when we get off the plane, you say, oh my God, that was a really pleasant time. I wonder if I could listen to that conversation on a podcast.
And what we do is get right back on the airplane and have that same conversation with somebody else.
It's called the multi-level marketing scheme. We're on multi-levels, the ground and the sky. And if you don't like that conversation, you say, oh, my seatmate was a real pill. Well, then you were sitting next to Parker Posey, but also don't listen to our podcast. But if you do like it, we're like extremely happy you're here. And if you like it so much that you want to see us in real life, boy, oh boy, do I have an opportunity for you.
We are going on an international tour. We're doing Dublin, London, Toronto. We're doing Philly, DC, San Francisco, Chicago, and NYC.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. It's going to be the Memoir Madness Tournament, a tournament of memoirists where, much like our previous live shows, if you've ever been, we bring back from the archives a lot of our old memoirists. But at these shows, we are each going to be representing a memoirist and we're going to be duking it out. We're going to physically fight each other.
Oh, you are so fucked.
I know.
I feel like I'm like more jacked and sharper than ever. Like my knuckles are like Wolverine claws. They're just coming out.
My physical fighting strategy is the same as my words fighting strategy. And that's where I just start crying before you can and see what happens.
She's a brilliant opponent. She's a great chess master.
I'll tell you what, everyone gets uncomfortable and only few can proceed.
I've been training by hitting babies. No symphony for nobody. Oh, I said symphony, but
we knew, but we won't correct it because I got no symphony.
Something funny that this reminded me of is that merch on an iPhone corrects to mercy. And so we were laughing about how people are always DMing us being like, is there going to be any mercy at the show? Will you be bringing any mercy tonight? And we're like, no mercy, only merch. And that's what I'm bringing to our fist fight.
Yeah.
No mercy, only merch.
And to these shows, mercy TBD, but merch, we'll have some.
Anyway, Ashley, if you were a celebrity, what do you think you would even put in your book last week?
Okay, in my book, I would put, wow, a state of calm, a sleep of surrender. Boy, oh boy, where you people write about this cell phone not in your bedroom thing.
Wow. You know who Ashley's really been duking it out with? Her own phone addiction every week.
I can't believe how bad it is. Well, it's like food where I'm like, I have to be on it.
I have to tell you something. I just saw a screenshot from Joe from Good Children, a podcast we love, friends of the pod. And he put up a screenshot that he's been using an app that said he had gotten back 22 years of his life. And I went, I bet he's still on his phone. And that made me go, oh my God, how many years of my life am I spending on my phone? Scary stuff.
Scary stuff. So I have been sleeping on my phone outside of my bedroom.
Wow.
And I don't know what it's been doing for my screen time overall because I still am on my phone all day. Like I have, a bit of classic insomnia. And sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I go, well, if I'm not sleeping anyway, I might as well see what's on Twitter. And then I like look at all of the people, just like being bombed to death. And I go, well,
was that bad for sleep?
Who's going to sleep now? It's really bad. And then even when something fun is on my phone, I go, well, that made me laugh. And now I'm alert. Okay, I started it last week. I think I've probably done like 4 or 5 nights with my phone not in my room. And the way that I've been able to have like markedly better days. And I feel like it's starting to have like a karmic association in my mind where I'm like, if you sleep with your phone outside of your room, you'll have a positive day. And if you sleep with your phone in your room, like last week when I was really grumpy, that was one of the days where I slept with my phone in my room. So things are shaking up around here. Stay tuned. I might be really positive.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. Claire, if you were to write a book about your week, what would you call it?
Well, it happened. My ass getting frogged. I don't know if I talk about this on the main pod as much as the Patreon.
No, you talk about it everywhere all the time.
One of my big fears in this life is getting frogged a la Parasite. I just always am like, what if somebody's living in my home and I don't even know? And it started out as a joke. But then like the more I talked about it, the more I felt I was manifesting it. And today I came home from the gym and you'll never believe it. The door was wide open. And 2 dudes were sitting on my step. And my initial thought was, they're guarding my home. They're sitting on the step and making sure nobody sneaks into the wide open house. But then the more I was thinking about it, I was like, but what if they were on alert? What if they were on the lookout because their buddy's up in there?
Well, then they weren't looking out very good because
that's
now
what
they're
I
home.
That's what I was saying. So anyway, I was scared to really go anywhere. I was late reading the book today, and it is because I was being frogged actively and I didn't know what to do. And I kept calling Ashley on FaceTime and being like, can you yell out to the people to let them know they need to leave?
I kept trying to make Bug bark into the phone so they would think there was a vicious dog in the house. But Bug was doing her morning snooze.
Also, the problem is I'm by the door. So if they think there's something vicious by the door, they're only going to retreat more into the frog. And I just think that I know that this is my fault, both because I spoke it into existence and I did leave the door open.
I kept yelling out and going, I have a gun, but I'm not mad at you if you just leave calmly. Nobody's mad at you if you just leave.
You know how I do that thing where I'll have a bad habit and then I'll be aware of it and then I'll kind of be like, instead of fixing it, I'll be like, I thought that one was you. Like the way I leave trash around and I'll be like, oh, I thought that was your trash this time though. Like I'll look at the trash and go, I should throw that trash away and go, but what if it's Ashley's and she wants it?
Yeah. Remember when I moved into my new house, Claire just never asked me where the garbage can was. And
it should be intuitive. It should be intuitive.
It was just under the sink. If you don't see an outside of the cabinet's trash can, I feel like you immediately look under the sink.
I think I did, but I missed it.
It's the whole cabinet is a garbage can.
It acted like a green screen. I saw right through.
And so she would do this thing for like probably over a month.
I did it more than once. I just remember the one time.
It was a lot, like every time. And that's why I asked about it. I said, do you need help with the garbage can? And you were like, I thought the counter was the garbage can. It was crazy.
I would like neatly pack it up. It would happen so fast that when confronted, I said, I know this is wrong, but I don't know what's right. I was trying to put my garbage away.
Trying in a way that you didn't really do any trying.
I know I looked somewhere and it wasn't there, and I couldn't think of a second place.
Okay.
So I just said, oh, she must just keep her garbage here on the couch.
Tell me what's happened now with a trait that you attributed to me. You thought my fear was frog?
No, I've been blaming Mac for leaving the door open and keep saying, no, it's you. And he keeps saying, I really don't think that's true. It's happened like 6 times in the last 3 days.
Oh my God, you're frogged. Your ass is frogged.
And I was like, you're deliberately leaving the door open. I'm always confused about it, but I don't want to interrupt you. And it seems that no, I'm mistakenly leaving the door open. Anyway, accountability has been taken, and a man is now my roommate. Or woman. A frog could be a froggy, a frogette, or a frogoat.
You're straight. You can't say frogoat.
Well, guys, if you've guessed, wow, they're doing anything but get to this memoir. Touche. You got our asses. You got our asses like the frog got me.
Okay. This week we are reading You're on an Airplane by Parker Posey. And I have to tell you something. It is up there with one of the worst we've ever read. It's so... Like, what is the difference between this and Jennifer Love Hewitt's Amazon advertisement? Like, both of them
I'll
had
tell you
nothing
what,
happening.
Jennifer Love Hewitt was filled with love. I would take a Jennifer Love Hewitt anytime. She's like, what I love is my children and throwing them parties and filling the earth with garbage. What does Parker Posey love? How much better she is than everybody. She loves fucking with waiters.
Tori Spelling is able to have stories that all have a start, a middle, and an end. And even if the start is like one time she was trying to put her hair in a ponytail and the middle is then she started getting paranoid that her neighbor could do a better ponytail than her. And then the end was her giving up and actually shaving her head. Like, that is still
cause and effect.
Every single thing that happens in a Tori Spelling memoir, you're like, I understand what the story is about. Even if I don't think the story should have been written, I get that it's a story. This book has almost no sentences that relate to the following sentences.
I guess it really is like if you were next to somebody on an airliner who had been given like Klonopin and a white wine, and they just could be like, no, the thing about me is I'm not allowed to take baths anymore because I've flooded multiple homes, but I do it. And you're just like, I just wanted to take a nap and read my book. And they're like, no, my bath problem is this. And you'd be like, ah. That's Parker Posey. But then she's also condescending.
Yeah.
She's like, nonsense, but also better than you.
Nothing she's saying is interesting or worth saying, but it's also she knows more about anything than you, but what she's said is nothing.
I feel deeply she has no female friends.
I feel deeply that she actually has no friends.
But I think she's the kind of camp that like both straight men and gay men can love as part of their menagerie of ladies, of like kooky, eccentric women who are so teeny tiny and beautiful.
But like not in a friendship way, in like a
menagerie,
when you're inviting more than 10 people to a place, she gets an invite.
Well, I think when you get like a 12-person dinner, you like invite her as a party trick.
Exactly. I was definitely disappointed by this book just because...
Can you guys tell?
Just because I liked Parker Posey, and I actually can't believe the way that I turned, not because even the book was so annoying, but because everything that is a coherent trait that you learn about her from this book is an unlikable thing. Like everything about her kind of sucks in a way where you're like, why did you write a story with no plot, only details about like why you're actually a deeply frustrating person?
Well, should we try to get into it?
Where would we start? Okay, the other thing about this book is because it's written where no sentences connect to the following sentence. We've read a lot of books that have like a very unique style of writing. And sometimes it takes a moment to get into them. And then once you find your step with it, it becomes very easy to read. Like you really become enmeshed in this like weird vibe. This book, I was physically bouncing off the page. I felt like my eyeballs could not lock onto words. There were parts where I just kept having to go back and be like, what is she even talking about? Like, what character are we even discussing? She would like introduce a neighbor and I would have to go back like 6 pages to be like, who is Rob? Oh, your doorman?
I mean, I think stylistically, you're referencing probably a lot of the essay books we've read where people are like bringing in disparate moments and ideas and then kind of braiding them together to have a conclusion at the end. There is no conclusion at the end. This just is a woman who seems like she's maybe on a painkiller and alcohol. Do you know what I mean? She seems like she's mixed pills and alcohol, and now she's just rambling.
Really, though, who read this before it went to print?
I guess I do think if you find her like camp, you're like, oh my God, this is just like a conversation with you. I don't know. I guess I was thinking maybe if you love Parker Posey, this would be exactly the book you wanted from her, but you liked Parker Posey.
I mean, I definitely didn't love her, but I really quite liked her.
So why did she write a book? Well, I'll tell you right here. By the way, the book is called You're on an Airplane.
Get it? Because you're sitting next to her on an airplane and she's talking to you.
Yes, the book. I realized it was time. There were stories to share that my friends were entertained by, so I thought, tell them. There's also a literary agent who lives in my neighborhood whose partner art-directed Party Girl. I started feeling guilty when I'd see him because he'd say, I know there's a book in you. So I went into sort of a labor and produced a sort of baby where instead of it being a human being, it's a bound object made of paper called pages with the words on it. You bring it to life and make it all talk. Just don't leave it alone for too long or it will start crying.
Also, I'm sorry, you wrote this book because you felt guilty that you weren't giving a book to your neighbor. This book probably got your neighbor fired.
There's also all these like kooky collages throughout that are all photos of her. The first sentence of the book, chapter 1, is flight attendant. Hi, can I have a scotch neat? And then she goes on and on about how she's not on Facebook. At the beginning, I'm going to read a couple full paragraphs just to get you guys into the world of this book. And you know what I mean? You know when we're like, no, we have to prove it to you?
Yeah, you have to understand that we're not exaggerating when we say this book was nonsense and stressful.
Norma Desmond, the fading silent film star who bemoaned the advent of the talkies, was portrayed by the inimitable Gloria Swanson, first clothes horse and woman of indomitable spirit. You've seen it? So you know that she wore a turban in the film and said things like, I am big, it's the pictures that got small. Now look at the small pictures we've gotten on these freaking iPhone screens. The tiny screens have gotten into people's hands. There's all this swiping going on, all this shoe fly bullshit. In the 90s, we had big screens in the cinema and big TVs in our house. It boggles the mind what people can walk around with small televisions in their pockets and use them as telephones. I saw a baby in a stroller on an iPhone just the other day on the sidewalks of Manhattan. Now, tell me, who was the baby texting? Are you on Facebook? It's wonderful that people have Facebook friends, but I don't have Facebook friends because I'm not on it. I want to read people's faces in present-time reality. How could they be a book? It's presumptuous and absurd. I went on someone's Facebook once. Now, that just sounds crude. And what I really wanted was proof that these people are real. But there is no proof because I wasn't there. I wasn't on the vacation at the graduation at the spring break party. I wasn't there for the birth of the baby or for all those salads. It should be called Scrapbook Face. That's more apropos. There was a movie about that guy who invented it, Mark Zuckerberg, right? Thank you. I never saw it, but I did go to the premiere to mingle in the lobby of the theater and to social network. Anyway, my Instagram followers say not to join because it's a rabbit hole and I trust them. Is this how I grow old? Saying things like my followers, like a cult leader, and going on about turbans? Looks like it. Okay.
And then she goes on for another 2 pages about turbans and like as if she's like fastening a turban to your head and going, isn't that more comfortable? Isn't that a more comfortable way to hold your hair?
You have to assume that the you in this book quite literally is you and that you have a physical being and you're next to her on a plane. Because sometimes she like goes for a bathroom break.
It starts out very heavily on this plane thing, but throughout the book, she'll go back to it randomly.
Yeah, she's then telling you about a dream she had where she marries Matt Damon. Once she stayed at Chris Kattan's house, who used to be Danny DeVito's house. And she says, look at Jeremy Renner. What?
One of the recurring musings in this is, despite having had some success in Hollywood,
and specifically the indie film movement in the 90s,
does she have enough of a name and enough money to like maintain a career as an actor? She kind of keeps going in being like, I still have to audition for things. It's still very hard for me to get a role. I'll still go through these long droughts where I don't know if I'll ever work again. I always think every movie is going to be my last.
She then says it's not fair for me because I'm a man. And because her agent's going, well, look at Jeremy Renner. He didn't really get work until his 40s. And she goes, well, he's not a woman, is he? She then does a list of movies she has turned down because she thought they just sounded stupid and wouldn't go for the meeting. Born Identity, Anaconda.
Oh my God. Later, she talks about turning down Angelina Jolie's role in Girl Interrupted.
She says It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia sounds stupid because it's not always sunny. She also talks about how she thinks Spinal Tap was stupid because she doesn't care about heavy metal. She like often won't even read a script because she thinks this title is stupid. She thinks everything is beneath her.
I mean, she won't even not read a script when the title is stupid. She'll throw it into the hallway.
And go, why would you even show this to me?
I've maintained a career and I love to act, but I think every job is my last. And when I start the job, I forget I know how to do it. And by the time I find out that I do, I'm done. I'm always thinking there are other jobs I could do instead, but maybe those are just characters I want to play. I'm not great at being a movie star. It's too boring or too much work. I've had too much therapy, I think. I don't think you've had enough
She's
therapy.
in psychoanalysis a lot.
Yeah. When people say my analyst, I go, oh no.
Like it has to go beyond just like self-obsession.
Yeah.
Because at first you're on her side. You're like, oh, it's so hard, that industry. She goes, the Times called me the queen of independent cinema. And that's when my career in independent cinema virtually ended. Oh my God, this cough.
I guess what I really thought this book was going to be about is I thought this about Judy too. Greer. Where like someone who's been in the middle, but not in the midst of Hollywood. Like in everything and a part of so much, but like not.
She's not a famous person.
The famous person. I thought they would have like the most interesting stories. But oftentimes I'm like, well, I guess this is why people didn't like click with you. I don't know.
I mean, Parker Posey is an interesting example of who doesn't quote unquote sell out and what becomes of them. But also like.
She does sell out.
And also, I'm sorry, she's not some cool punk rocker who's holding on to her beliefs. She's just a fucking complainer.
Yeah.
Who thinks everything's beneath her.
So she loves Nora Ephron. Nora Ephron is like her mentor.
So she talks about like a couple of years back, I wasn't sure I could handle how financially motivated the conventional showbiz had become, even in theater, which was surprising and devastating. And she talks about a role she had originated on Broadway, and then she kind of immediately gets cut and they replace her with a more bankable star. And then she sees a guy who was part of the play at a party and she goes up to him. She's like, what happened there? What? And she's like, he disappeared. He wouldn't answer me. But then the next few chapters is about how she'll lose multiple cell phones at a time. I feel like she's always breaking bones. She seems very flighty. She's very difficult. She's always telling these stories about harassing waitresses, making her makeup artist cry, and then being like, I was just playing games. I love to have fun like that. I'm like, it could just be that unfortunately you are the difficult actress we've heard of.
Also, when you're describing the other person as a more bankable star, I don't know. Broadway is notoriously not doing well financially since a long time. I don't know when the last time Broadway was just like kind of coasting on its laurels saying, oh yeah, we could take a risk here because, we just have more money than we know what to do with. If there's an actress that's going to sell tickets.
Yeah, you were given the opportunity to start it. So if you weren't doing well, they wouldn't have replaced you for no reason.
Yeah. So then she has a nervous breakdown and fully ends up in the ER, but she never really talks about that more.
Then we hear how she got her name. She was born in the ICU a couple weeks early.
She's a twin.
That guy does not come up. I don't even know that she remembers him often.
My twin brother, Chris, was closer to the door on the way out. Hanging out in utero together would be the closest we'd be in our lives.
So she was born November 8th, 1968 at 3 a.m.
And her family is a band of kooks.
They thought she was going to die and her father prayed to God. And she like genuinely believes that like the angels were delivering his message to God's ears. She's like, my dad has this trick where if he prays hard enough, he can have whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good trick.
That's like a cool trick.
She goes, my mother says she thought the name Posey was silly and it really is. I know that my name sounds made up, I will most definitely make that arm hat for Halloween next year and come as myself. So she was in the NICU for a while when she was born. And when they finally brought her home, they took a photo of her. I'm in my mother's lap wearing fake eyelashes. When I asked my mom why she put fake eyelashes on me, she said, "You were so small, I didn't know what to do with you." She also said, "You were born a nervous wreck." Putting fake eyelashes on a newborn baby is one of the craziest things I've ever heard.
Her family's a band of kooks.
Yeah. Why would you put fake eyelashes on a little baby and be like, "Well, you were just so anxious. I had to calm you down by making you hotter." That's like what do you mean she was a nervous wreck when she was born? She was a baby. People are so crazy.
I don't even know what to say. Okay, so her dad was in the military, and when he got sent to Vietnam, they moved back down to Louisiana where her grandparents all were. I don't know that any of this really means anything or matters to the rest of this book.
What matters most is she thinks her dad is like a comedic genius. And boy, oh boy, to steal a phrase from Ashley, if he did his comedic genius to me, he would get a little popped in the head. Okay.
That's a phrase from me?
Boy, oh boy.
Oh, I thought you meant getting popped in the head.
No. If either of us are going to pop, it's me.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, don't put a whoopee cushion under my tuchus at the restaurant if I don't know you. Even if I do. I don't think that's funny.
I don't think a whoopee cushion is funny.
He seems like a big whoopee cushion guy.
I'm an actor because funny things happen to me and shame flirts with me. So she says one time she went walking down the street and her pants fell down around her ankles, and then she just stood there and she said, "My pants fell down." And no one really acknowledged her because they thought she was like a pervert.
That is funny. You gotta be an actor now. Or you could pull up your pants.
There's two things you could do from here. When I'm asked, what is it like being an actress? I always say it's like walking around with your pants down around your ankles.
Here's a story. In my Chelsea days in the 90s, I'd start baths and forget about them, flooding the beauty shop downstairs. But Kathleen, the owner, was laid back and cool. It's the third time in a month I've flooded the beauty shop downstairs. I forgot about it. How could this happen again? Like forgetting is something that happens to you and not something that you participate in or that you're like, responsible for creating.
You really can't flood I'm sorry. If the person who lived above me flooded my apartment
and was constantly like,
times,
"Sorry, I'm running baths and forgetting about them," like
I would kill them.
I always put tea on and forget about it. But do you know what the consequences are?
Cold water.
Nothing. If every time I forgot that I had like put tea on the kettle, somebody's stuff was ruined, I would be like, well, I guess I just can't have tea.
If like the electrical in a hair salon was getting shorted every time I made tea, I wouldn't be allowed to have tea.
She loses her phone all the time. It's very funny.
Everyone's always laughing. Things like that just happen. And that's the reason I'm an actor.
Yeah, then she tells a story about David Harbour and how he tore his Achilles when he was supposed to play the character Achilles.
LOL.
Sometimes you're in the play, but not the play you'd intended. And that's what's strange with a career in acting. She gives a recipe for her no-knees fireball. I have to say, she spends a lot of time talking about her two grandmothers. And I tell you what.
If there's anyone I could care less about. Could not care less about? There's no one I could care less about.
I don't care. Let's put it flatly.
Noni hated her brother-in-law and he died, thank God.
Okay.
I will say she has a lot of funny photos in this book of her dog wearing costumes, and that's something I'm on board with, actually. There are a lot of random recipes in this book. A lot of
they all sound like ass.
And collages and things where you're like, why did they make you make this book be 300 pages? It seems like you really only had 110.
She also had another grandma named Granny. She was from the South, right? From Texas?
Mm-hmm.
And eventually they moved to Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
It was very exciting to her family when she got on As the World Turns because they had watched soap operas too.
One of the dads left at some point. I think it was her dad's dad or her dad's grandpa. It's hard to tell because she's telling these stories in such a manner that it's impossible to tell what's happening, especially when you don't care. I've gotten a few parts that I auditioned for, and that was one of them, Party Girl. Auditioning feels like my real self has been punished and sent to my room while my pretend self is forced to make nice when there's nothing I've done wrong.
Auditioning is just like a normal part of acting. I really don't respect that she thinks she's above auditioning, especially in
the early 90s when she was making Party Girl. Why wouldn't she have to audition for that?
She really thinks she's better than everything. It's so funny that she thinks that Times review that she's the queen of indie cinema ruined her career because all it did was go to her head.
Yeah.
She ruined her career.
She's always lamenting. She's like, oh, no one shoots on film anymore. It's ridiculous. Nobody looks up from their phone anymore. Everyone's on social media.
She said editing film with your hands versus editing digitally is like cleaning a dish by hand or putting it in a dishwasher. I'm like, that's actually not true. People still like edit. It's still like the human experience. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And also, I don't think that either thing inherently makes the dish less clean. Like you could have a bad dishwasher or like a bad hand cleaning or a good dishwasher or a good hand. Like, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, the dish is still the exact same dish and now cleaned. So it's a bad metaphor in two ways.
She does 2 whole pages about Sam Rockwell and all the time she ran into him because he auditioned for Liev Schreiber's part in Party Girl and didn't get it. That feels random. Then she talks about Liev Schreiber and how amazing he was when he came on the scene. He later told me he almost didn't do the part in Party Girl because I seemed like an idiot.
Unfortunately, she does seem like a huge idiot. Independence filmmaking felt small town, which was nice. There was congeniality and favors granted if people had good relationships. I mean, this obviously is something I like. We like are in a world now where everyone is like, but what's in it for me? And it is sucky. And like, this is what we talked about in the Patti Smith book, right? Like the best thing you can do for your art is like be in an artistic community.
I don't know that it's like people don't do favors. It's just so dominated by the money, you know?
Yeah.
That the big studios have made it impossible. The way that they like snatch everybody up from Marvel and they're like, we can pull you out of any project at any time.
Yeah. So I guess that there are things that I agree with her about, but also I wish that she cared about anything.
You look at someone like Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
Who said, I want to work with more small, independent female directors. So what she's done is she does the big AMC commercial so that she can then go and do 4 movies a year and help use her big name to elevate these smaller projects. You look at a Kristen Stewart who has done the same thing. Like there are ways to be like, I pay the bills and I do the art.
Yeah. But the problem is Parker Posey doesn't want to do anything.
Yeah.
She just wants to have been a part of like the good version.
Here's a piece of advice that Steven Soderbergh said to Greg Mottola, who did The Day Trippers. His advice to Greg was to write something contained with not too many locations, and the locations you'd need could belong to your friends and family who you could also cast. And I think that is great advice.
There are a couple pieces of good advice in here that all come from other people telling other people. But like Parker Posey eventually like gets her grips on it and she puts it in her book, which is the only thing worth reading this book for, I think.
She, of course, talks about loving like the film experience and the independent experience. They also called independent movies guerrilla filmmaking. But it's more like punk rock because no one cares if the movie makes money and you're in it for the experience of the art of it. And then she talks about John Cassavetes and recommends a documentary called A Constant Forge. She then defines the word forge.
Oh, thank God.
It means to make and fire.
It wasn't unusual to work more than 12 hours a day, but sometimes being overtired frees you up and the commotion around you fades away.
So then throughout this book, she also is just like telling you about her like homeopathic experiences. So she loves yoga. So once she did a movie in New Mexico and learned about a new kind of yoga. She went to the Ayurvedic Cafe and she goes to the Ayurvedic Institute and she makes dal for people and she passes it out.
I will go out on a limb to tell you I have past lives in India. Okay.
She will also go out on a limb to tell you that she's famous. Multiple times in this book, she's approaching someone being like, I'm an actress. And if they don't like clock her, she goes, oh, I'll show you my IMDb. She like goes up to the front of the yoga class and is like, I just didn't want to bother anybody, but I did want to let you know, like, I am an actress and I'm here in a movie with Julia Roberts. She's like, anyway, he took to me immediately. I love a yogi who loves fame. Jay Shetty, shout out. You know they're a monk when they're really good friends with A-list celebrities.
You know they're a monk when they're writing a book and doing a podcast about it.
My favorite monks, they're all in Daily Mail.
Except for Tony Shalhoub.
He should be in Daily Mail. He's an actor.
I know.
It's so
but he
sick.
never is.
It's so sick the way the world works.
So then she auditions for Blade Trinity, which is her sellout movie.
Here's the movie she doesn't get because she doesn't take it seriously enough. Girl Interrupted. At her speed audition, she like made a joke and was like, what? You said that she's a comedian. And then she auditions for Meet the Parents. I remember Mr. De Niro, Robert, saying, if you could just commit, but I couldn't. I think those movies did really well and weren't they our sequels? Imagine going to a fucking audition with Robert De Niro and like...
And being like, oh, this is just so stupid.
You want me to say what? With passion? Auditioning, that's beneath me.
Parker.
And then being like, why don't I have a career?
Okay. Yeah, we'll get to it later, but I have another great
This is like that TikTok girl who like went to the audition with shorts on and was like, why am I not allowed to wear shorts to an interview?
Yeah, her job interview with shorts on. She's like, oh, so you can't wear shorts to job interviews anymore?
Like never.
We've gotten too professional.
That was never the case. You're recalling a past that never existed.
But wouldn't it be nice? I really don't think it would be nice. I think that there is like
a decorum of sorts.
Yeah.
That helps all of us. Dress for the job you want. I don't know what job wears jorts. I guess Uniqlo mannequin in May. Can I tell you that is kind of who I want to be? But
no. Funny joke coming from you, Uniqlo mannequin in December.
Yeah.
So she's auditioning for Blade Trinity, and her agents say it would be good for the studio to see that you want to participate. It'll be good for your career.
And I thought, hey, just because it's not my bag doesn't mean it's not in my makeup bag. And I don't know what that means.
No, me either. But she gets the job in Blade Trinity, and it's, an experience. I don't really know anything about it other than like her and Wesley Snipes' conversations.
She says there's a fine line I've found between being playful and becoming inappropriate or even difficult.
I don't know that she's found.
People really did not like her. She was always giving advice.
At one point, she fang chomped at her makeup artist.
I gnashed my fangs at my makeup artist and she started crying. I hugged her afterwards and told her I was just joking and acting out. Can I tell you, if someone gnashed their fangs at me, I would definitely know they were joking. So it makes me wonder, what did you do to make it seem like you actually were going to attack her like a vampire?
Yeah, I do think, especially when she's the one applying the fangs and therefore highly aware that they're fake.
What was the environment where you going was actually so upsetting that she was like, she's going to kill me, that Parker Posey?
Were there words involved? Did you say something mean in the moment of your gnashing?
Had you been saying something mean? She also doesn't like Wesley Snipes. Her last scene on Blade, she's going through the air like a vampire and shooting somebody. So she had some method of acting where she put her legs up on a wall so that she'd be all filled with blood and ready to go. To prepare, I lay on the floor with my legs up against a wall to get my blood flowing and napped using my purse as a pillow. That to me is not how you get prepared for a war scene, but I'm not an actress, so what do I know? When they finally called the scene, I got it together, ready to glide sideways with that steady vampiric grace and intensity, ready to shoot with my gun. We did a take and the director came up to me afterward and said, "That was great, but you were making sounds with your mouth when you shot the gun." "Really?" I said. "You could see my mouth move." David nodded. "And we can hear you." That is really funny to be in Blade Trinity going with your mouth. What was she holding, her index finger?
The way that she doesn't care about anything.
She goes, "Sorry, I've never shot a gun before." I'm like, well, maybe get to an alleyway and practice.
I'm not saying you have to go method, but if you can't figure out with your brain that you don't say pew, pew, pew. So she's at CAA, the talent agency, because she says she heard they package movies there. And that means that if you're assigned with them, then they're more likely to have a friend who's working on a movie that you can then play the best friend in that movie because they're piling all their stars into one flick. I guess the thing is, it does work. A lot of her roles come from being in the same diner with someone.
What was also happening was a paradigm shift, as those in the biz call it, in the types of the movies getting made. Whoa, was me when I heard the Lego movie. I had a hard time wrapping my head around that one. I tried to imagine it. I'm going to my friend's house. They have kids and the elevator opens to the apartment. I step out of the elevator and see a bunch of Legos on the floor. I holler out, "You need help cleaning this up?" No. I know they made the Legos talk to each other. I didn't see it, but I wonder if their teeth clattered. Anyway, yay for the plastic arts and new forms. The problem is I am aligned with her in being like, yeah, what do you mean every single movie that comes out has $1 billion behind it and is based on a magic 8-ball? What are you talking about that everything has to be IP that already exists? Toothbrush, the movie. Everybody's heard of a toothbrush, so the audience is built in. I get that this is bullshit nonsense suck, but I also am the other thing she poo-poos
is everything. That's the problem, is there's no discernment between what she's poo-pooing. Because I understand saying everything's a sequel, everything is IP. Why does every board game have to be a movie? Why does every movie have to then become a board game again with a reissued version of the board? This is insane, but also everything she sees, she's like, that's stupid. That's stupid. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is stupid. This is stupid. Everything's dumb to her. And
I'm sorry. To look down on Spinal Tap shows a real lack of taste.
Of course. Of course it does,
What,
Claire.
were you never in 9th grade? You don't know the joy of This is Spinal Tap.
Seeing the tiny rock because they wrote the wrong measurements down was the funniest thing I'd ever seen in my entire life.
The drummer that spontaneously combusts, that's like the funniest way to die. I've always hoped to do so.
If you go shopping for a new speaker and you don't ask if it goes to 11,
you're a loser.
You're a loser, and no one in the store is having fun that day.
And you were never in 9th grade, and I can prove it.
Okay, so then she runs into Nora Ephron when she's having a hard time because she loves Nora Ephron. So she's been going to CAA for meetings, and they're telling her, like, yeah, we'll see what we can package together. And she's like, the movie industry has become all packages and no heart. And it's like, yeah, but if it was all heart, then you would have had something nasty to say about that.
I mean, you skipped the whole part where somebody like asked her to keep her dog from shitting in the airplane.
And she yells at them.
And then she's like, my dog needs a Mr. Like, I don't know. She's just on a...
Okay, so then she runs into Nora Ephron, and then she had just been on a plane where her dog took a shit, and then she was like cleaning it.
She had the shit in her hand or something. That's a big thing. She's like, a big thing.
There's
with
like
her.
More than once she's got a shit in her hand.
Okay, can I spoil something from the end?
The part where she tried to like cherish a petrified poop.
I don't know where she didn't get to. She like found an old poop from a dead dog and like put it in her grandma's handkerchief and keeps it in her dresser. And then she's like, how lucky am I? How lucky are you? There's a crisis of shit in New York City. I can't escape it sometimes. Can you imagine putting it with your clothes where things must smell the best?
I can't imagine a single part of what happens there.
Surely you have memories. Cherish the memories.
Cherish the memories. Take a photo.
It wasn't even her dog.
It was her like uncle's dog or something.
Her uncle's dog's years old shit. She keeps it with her undies. Nasty work. Anyway, so she's met Nora Ephron at the luggage area and her dog's carrier is filled with shit, but she wants to chat. We've all been there. I've never been there.
I've never been there. And I have a dog. And I'll tell you what, she's quite polite with her shits.
You remember when her thing, though, was shitting in the middle of the street while she was crossing it?
Yeah.
That was tough.
Yeah, it was not good for any of us. But guess what?
You never picked it up and put it in your dresser?
None of it's in my dresser. She's hardly even taken shits inside ever. And it's only ever from when she gets so scared. And hers are fun because of Just Food for Dogs. Sponsor us, please.
Back to Selma Blair? Who are we talking about?
Parker Posey, who you actually called like less evil Selma Blair, which I really agree with.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like a real like good, chaotic evil, chaotic neutral, but it's
all like eccentric ladies who hate you.
Chaotic annoying to chaotic evil.
So she talks about how romantic comedies just aren't the same anymore.
She's like, no, but actually she comes to your exact... Ashley wrote a great Substack a few weeks ago about how the problem with today's rom-coms is that there's no interiority for the side characters. That if you think of like The Great When Harry Met Sally, the two best friends on either side, they have such an interesting arc themselves that there's not a lot of world building, and world building is done through friends with their own dynamics. And Parker Posey's noticed this too, and she's like, why can't people have a funny best friend anymore, and why can't it be me?
We're all wondering, Parker Posey.
I am thinking maybe it's personal.
Yeah.
With Parker, I think maybe
I
it's
wonder if
personal.
Parker Posey got edited out of the industry, and with that, an entire genre of character.
Yeah, they were just like, well, we can't think of a second weird brunette.
Yeah, so we have to just like not write movies like this anymore.
May I suggest Ashley?
Oh my God, why can't I be a weird brunette?
Did you guys know that Ashley has actually been written up in The New Yorker, praised for her acting abilities? She was like in one single scene in somebody's web series once, and literally she was called out by name by The New Yorker in their review.
Thank you.
You're actually a really good actor, and it's so random. I do think you have a future in acting.
Thank you.
I think in your 40s, you're suddenly going to be like in like The Office.
Oh my God, that would be sick as fuck.
I would love that.
I've never really acted in anything except for that one short and like one other thing.
Bitchnesses.
And bitchnesses. And I also have never auditioned for anything. But
you're like Parker
But if
Posey.
anyone like wanted me to, I would. I'm not like against auditioning. I've just never been asked.
Ashley, I always say, is like Kristen Stewart, and that she also has that thing where she like won't really give anything, but it kind of plays well on camera because you're like, well, she's not overacting. I don't even know that she's barely opening her mouth. But it plays very subtle.
Well, The New Yorker liked it.
That's what I'm saying. It plays in the room. I'm always like, Ashley, you've got to move your face a little. And you're like, I'm trying. And then on film, I go, well, she commands the presence of the room.
Thank you. One time she read this script that she hated so much, she like threw it into the hallway, and then she met up with an old friend and he pitched her a project that she hated so much, she literally threw up. And then she said, please just stop talking about this project.
And he was like
writing it.
He was the head of casting in a major motion picture studio. And he was like trying to cast her in something. And she literally puked at him. He was like, don't fucking talk to me about this god-awful I mean, can you imagine you have this friend that you've always thought was talented but gets in her own way, and you're like, I'm gonna throw you a bone. I know you're about to sell your apartment because you can't afford to live in it anymore, and you're like, really, she's always having money troubles, and somebody's like, I'll help you out. And she goes and then she takes her jug and she squeezes it in the midsection like an emptying mayonnaise jar, and she makes it shit in your lap, and she goes, I hate you. You're beneath me. She doesn't say that last part, but I am like, imagine being like, your kind offer and favor is so repulsive to me that I'm puking.
I mean, she's like, yeah, I've done studio comedies before. Josie and the Pussycats was fun.
I'd worked with the young ladies from Josie and the Pussycats and had a sweet time. That's the only line about Josie and the Pussycats in this whole fucking book. Bitch, that was a classic. Be kind to my childhood. Honor me.
I guess I feel like Alan Cumming didn't really get to talk about Josie and the Pussycats because he had like a whole narrative going on about like who is or isn't his dad. Why isn't Parker Posey telling us about Josie and the Pussycats? When will someone just fucking tell me about Josie and the Pussycats?
Tara Reid.
Tara?
Actually, Tara Reid would have a great memoir.
Oh my God. Josie and the Pussycats Sharknado. What isn't this bitch in?
She's everywhere.
Tara, if you're interested in writing a book, we would guarantee coverage. How's that for an offer? So she's in Vancouver working on a show. When she's there, she like does yoga a lot. And she's like, Vancouver people are so Vancouver-y.
I don't know. Back when I was on her side, before I went, oh, you're the problem. She's talking about meeting Vince Vaughn. And whenever someone says, how are you? She goes, the paradigm shift, the paradigm shift. And he says, you're talented. Don't lose faith. Don't get down. I said something like, I think talent's a detriment. I kind of feel like I'm doing low key, like a subtly good Parker Posey inflection.
Yeah.
And I haven't really meant to, but I feel I'm getting in character quite sincerely.
I think you guys have a similar gait in terms of like mouth.
Speech?
Yeah. Like
the shape of our mouth or the way we speak?
The shape of your mouth and the way you like shape your face to speak. like if your mouth was the one walking, it would be a similar gait.
That makes sense to me because I feel like I'm coming by it easily.
Yeah.
I said something like, I think talent's a detriment. They don't know what to do with me out here. They think talent is another word for crazy, which it isn't. What do I know? I wish I could tell you that we went back to my room and pillow talked afterwards, riffing on our own versions of Sarah's cell, but that didn't happen. I went back to my dinner and watched all the women in their 20s who dressed like they were older in escort trophy fashion with their hair the same length and blown out straight, having a good time in Hollywood.
Sluts.
And I guess the first time I read that, I was like, oh, yeah, it's so true. Nobody wants an original anymore. And then I went, bitch, they do want you, but you won't call them back. They have to hire the brunette with sleeky hair because
you threw up when you got a role. You threw up at the person offering you a job.
I have to say, you know what Vince Vaughn isn't doing? Turning down classic roles like Fred Claus. My favorite movie.
Claire is a Fred Claus truther.
One time I made my in-laws watch Fred Claus and I could tell they were like, I can't believe this is the movie you've been talking about since we met you. Oh, I'll come to your house and I'll ruin your Christmas. I'll make you all watch Fred Claus.
Show you Claus. Fred Claus. Okay, so in Vancouver, she's farting about just doing yoga and getting brunch. And at brunch, they don't have French toast. Okay, I can't tell if they don't have French toast or if they won't bring her a single like side piece of French toast. Because she wants to get like regular food with a side of French toast.
Okay. When she asked if there was anything else she could do, I said, yes, can you bring me a piece of French toast? Then I went into my mean lady at the country club bit, uptight and jilted and patronizing. That's a really funny bit to be doing to somebody who's actually a literal waitress.
Who probably deals with like mean ladies.
If you're at an actual establishment and your bit is pretending like you're a rude person at the establishment, nobody knows you're joking. I like something sweet with brunch. If I'm going to even have brunch, I'm going to go for it. For a full order of anything, it's only a piece of bread soaked in scrambled egg. It's really the maple syrup I'd like, but I'd like some with bread with it if I'm going to eat brunch. I was flirting or entertaining her as I do sometimes with waiters and waitresses, as it can be part of the exchange of going to a restaurant. Can I say this idea that she has where she's like, you know, part of the fun for a waitress at a restaurant is when
being
like
berated
by Parker Posey. Why would you think this is a fun game?
So then she had this whole bit where she like popped her head into the kitchen and was like, we need French toast. And I can't imagine that the restaurant like loves it when people just like pop their head into the kitchen.
This is when I was like, enough. She would go to the bar alone and be like, I'm an actress. Have you heard of me? She's like, nobody here's heard of me because it's Canada and they don't know about America. I'm like, they know.
She went to this bar where they have really good hamburgers and they like only have a certain amount of hamburgers. And one time she went after they ran out of hamburgers and they didn't have any left. And she's like, but I'm famous.
I mean, she really loves this joke she does where she's kind of rude to the waitstaff.
It's so funny.
I'm dying to hear from the waitstaff how it goes.
So this next chapter is the first chapter that's like, I feel coherently about a project. And it is about the work she did with one Louis C.K.
Who she thinks is a genius.
Who she thinks is a genius.
Who's
I did
figured
some
it all out.
This book came out in 2018. Okay, because the thing is about Louis C.K., his allegations were rumored amongst the community for decades, as many allegations are, and they were news officially in 2017. So I do think it's important that this book came out in 2018. And she goes on to talk about what a genius Louis C.K. is. This is something that you could simply edit out.
Yeah, because it's like confined to one single chapter. And basically it's about how they met. He like really thought she was great. They go out to dinner.
Josie and the Pussycats got one sentence.
Yeah. Clearly she hated that.
Louis C.K. is all three of these characters. He is Louis, the title character, the accomplished artist, the role of the musician. He is the homeless man presenting no boundaries.
He's the frame itself as the director who composed it all. An artist given free rein to create exercises and test his limits and hours. The more an artist can create, though, the more solipsistic they can become.
So she acts in a project that he did. Like, they start hanging out all the time, and then he writes a role for her.
Okay, can I say actually the next sentence she says that's actually quite odd now in the context of her knowing? It's sad to think about how many men watch more porn on their phones than talk on them these days. These are not erotic times, to say the least.
What do you mean by that?
What do you mean by that? Anyway, she does that thing where she gives a scene by scene behind the scenes of the one episode of Louis she shot. She really finds him to be a genius. She's hurt that he drives away without giving her a ride home.
I think she was in a different project.
Okay, what was she in? I couldn't tell.
I think it's just like another thing he did. Remember when he was like making those videos and putting them on a website?
No.
I think she was in that. I don't think this was Louis. I think this was like another thing. And her character dies, and they have a very frustrating back and forth during her death scene.
Where he doesn't want her to die.
A few years later, he invites her over for Thanksgiving, and so she goes to his apartment, but he had moved since, and then she texts him to be like, hey, what's your new address? I'm like, at your apartment, and they say you don't live here, and he doesn't text her back for another hour. That is just humiliating, and I don't know, they had this like weird dinner.
Yeah, Thanksgiving.
Yeah, famously the weirdest dinner of the year.
She's like, there was so much food on the dining room table because everyone brought something to share. It was so bountiful that Louis mentioned giving what wasn't eaten to the homeless shelter. He'd lost weight and looked content. The vibe was chill and we all enjoyed each other's company. Art is the medicine the monster produces while trying to survive the labyrinth. When he or she is set free, the story is told and made human. Louis would squeeze past me and gently put his hands on my shoulders like a good dad. He was out of the labyrinth and my thread it was no longer. What are you talking about?
I really couldn't figure out what this chapter was about. I was like, wait, are you acknowledging that he's bad because he didn't give you the address for Thanksgiving dinner?
No, because she's comparing it to this myth.
Yeah.
There's the Minotaur myth where god Zeus sent a bull to Queen Pasiphae and she gave birth to a half-man, half-bull. Her husband, King Minos, was embarrassed about all this, so he had a labyrinth built for the Minotaurs to never escape from. He was a monster and slayed people and literally devoured them. There was all this Crete and Athens drama going on. The king of Athens had a son named Theseus who wanted to kill the Minotaur. He had lost a lot of friends who'd been sacrificed to the bull and was determined to end this feud between his dad and King Minos. The King Minos' daughter was struck by Venus and fell in love with Theseus. She wanted to marry him after he kills the Minotaur. She gives him a sword and some red string to tie to the entrance so he can find his way out. The labyrinth is pretty much inescapable, but Theseus finds his way out and slays the Minotaur. When he is free, though, he doesn't find her because he's not in love with her. She's left on the bathroom floor crying with a red piece of thread, which is where I was. So I guess this is about how she fell in love with Louis C.K. And then years later, she had Thanksgiving with him and she was like, but he's such a good dad that I'm okay.
Cool.
I thought he needed me, but he actually survived without me and I was just in love with him the whole time. It's so funny to be like the one girl Louis C.K. won't jerk off in front of. I wouldn't admit that.
I would never tell any.
Can you imagine being like
dead, not getting jerked off by Louis C.K.?
I mean, that's the problem. What you should have said is, please don't do this to me. And he would have been like, find me a pot. Find me a plant
Find me a pot to piss.
Yeah, he hates consent. That was your first mistake.
And I also was very much struck by the fact that the first time she really delves into a project, not to talk about the yoga she did while working on that project, was a project with Louis C.K.
By the way, in the middle of this, she talks about how mad she is about everything on FX and how it's all below her and it's all shows for men. I'd want my own show, I told them in a small, defeated voice. One of them said, "It's always sunny in Philadelphia." And I turned to look at the poster thinking, how can it always be sunny in Philadelphia? That's ridiculous. And crossed my legs, which seized my lower back into a muscle cramp. I shared this with them and we talked about back pain for a minute. It's all repressed anger, I said. One of the nicer gentlemen walked me out as I was limping and we stopped at a desk to make an appointment with his acupuncturist. Imagine being like
at FX being like, "It's always sunny is stupid. Why won't you make a show for me?"
It rains frequently in Philadelphia and it's now you're so dumb I have back pain. I am like, okay, well, this is why your career isn't as good as you think it should be. Why don't you like Always Sunny?
I want to just give a piece of advice to aspiring memoirists. If you think it's funny to be like flippant and trite, it won't come across.
Can I say what I think it is? The larger thing is you really have to be wary of complaining too much in a memoir because ultimately, if you're just sitting there being like, you don't understand, I'm the ultimate victim. If you have a book published, that means that like you have won in some ways.
Especially because later in the book, she's talking about, like, I thought this whole book was about how she never got rich doing acting because she's complaining the entire time. And she says she has no money the entire time. But at one point, she's buying John McEnroe and Tatum O'Neal's upstate, like, Catskills house.
Yeah.
They're rich.
Yeah.
So their house is probably nice. Something to think about.
And she has an apartment in Manhattan,
which is notoriously expensive. Anyway, so then she writes a chapter about her dad and how he is really handsome and really funny and really compelling. He could sell ice to water.
My dad brings the never met a stranger phrase to a whole nother level. I've met people on the sidewalks in New York City who say they had a great time with my dad on a flight or in a restaurant somewhere. They go out of their way to tell me this. He's so charismatic and seductive that he once gave an impromptu chiropractic adjustment to someone he had just met at a business party. No, he's not a professional chiropractor. He was a car salesman. He got that lady to lie on a table so he could crack her neck.
Okay, that's actually so dangerous, even if you're a chiropractor.
When we saw her rubbing her neck, looking like she was in pain as she walked to her husband, we tiptoed running out of there.
So then we get to part 2 of this book. This book has 3 parts, and there is nothing that separates them. It just is like a nice break to have like a blank page to stare at.
She starts talking about Dazed and Confused, and in order to talk about it, she has to explain to you the movie Slacker.
And how she was able to get in with this great casting director. And because she met this great casting director, she got to be in Dazed and Confused, which is really good. It's so crazy how lucky she got and how hard she still fights against herself.
Mm-hmm. In 2003, there was a 10-year reunion for Dazed in Austin, and around 20 of us from the cast were there. She has a ton of fun. And then she's like, in 2016, they did Everybody Wants Some, which was a spiritual sequel to Dazed. And she's like, I was invited to the premiere. I didn't know I was hosting the premiere. I showed up late, and I mingled as much as I could.
While she's mingling, she meets someone who's working on the movie Where'd You Go, Bernadette?
And she's like, how come I didn't get to be the star? And they're like, we're looking at you actually for one of the friends. And she goes, no, I'm the star. And she goes, that's why nobody likes to mingle with me. I'm too direct.
And it's like, no, that's not good for mingling or
anything. If somebody actually comes back and says, well, we're looking at you for this other role, you're not being direct. You're just like being obnoxious. They've already told you no.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay to straight up be like, oh, I'd love to be considered. But if they're like, we did consider you and we've decided no, you can't be like, well, I know better. Or you can, of course, you can say whatever you want, but you can't expect them to be like, cool, I love this conversation. Why don't you tell me other things in my business I'm doing wrong that actually should be your business?
And you also can't be like, they're just not good at mingling. So then she gets into her love of performing. And when she first discovered it, when she was 2 or 3, she would like perform for her parents' friends, kind of the classic sitch. Then she starts doing ballet and performing at like a summer camp. She just like loves being on stage.
That summer, the summer we moved, someone suggested I apply for a 6-week summer ballet class with the University of North Carolina School of the Arts Ballet Company. I got in and had the time of my life the following summer. I auditioned to enroll as a full-time student but didn't make the cut. My dad knew I'd be devastated, so he called the dean to ask him what he should tell me, and he said, tell her she's an actress.
And I think that might be why she's an actress.
My dad was the star of the show always, though. He'd do things like place a fart machine under the seats at check-in at the airport, and we'd wait for reactions when it sounded off. Don't you? That is terrorist behavior. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're a terrorist.
That was in Osama bin Laden's letter. He said the Americans are awful.
Not only are they always farting, but they'll make you fart. They'll accuse you of a fart you're innocent of.
She was kind of a weird kid. She says one time she was driving with her dad and she just opened the side door of the car and like let her feet glide across the pavement while the car was moving. And her dad was like, no, why'd you do that?
She had a crush on John McEnroe.
Who didn't?
Me. When the locusts would come, they would like go get them and make jewelry out of them, put bugs everywhere. And then she has her next consistent chapter, which is about how much she loved working with Woody Allen.
Guess what, guys? A really good guy and a genius is Woody. And this is, again, this book came out in 2018, and she mentions specifically having Googled the allegations against him. And
she says specifically, I can see both sides.
Now she starts talking about her house upstate and how she broke her wrist right before she was about to go start working on a Woody Allen movie.
And in this story about breaking her wrist in the house upstate, she tells a story about how her friend Jim got eye surgery. He works at Google. I'm like, this is not relevant.
No.
This isn't crazy or relevant.
She had a fantasy for many years about working with Woody Allen. She had watched a documentary about him on Netflix. I have to say, a documentary about Woody Allen on Netflix. What did she think it was about? Which documentary?
Also, that's such a funny reason for like an actress of her age to want to work with Woody Allen. Like, I just saw this documentary. Have you ever heard of this guy, Woody? He seems like a great...
Yeah.
It's one thing if you're like, I grew up a fan and I've loved his work. I've always wanted to work with him. But she'd be like, I just found out about this guy.
I was nervous to work with Woody Allen since he's been steadfast to his psyche, both creatively and in his life. The heart wants what it wants, the pronouncement he made on 60 Minutes about his love for Soon-Yi.
It could be an aria from an opera, couldn't it? Maybe. Any person left by their mother in childhood has an enormous weight and longing in their heart and soul with a life spent recovering. If I didn't believe in the complexities of another heart and soul, their story, their mystery, their truth, then I really would have to weave baskets. A culture that loses this becomes unhinged. It's the chewing gum, Mark calls it, that holds us together.
Bitch, what are you talking about?
You're telling us that like society is healing when Woody and Soon-Yi are together? Is that what you're saying?
Like, I really was starting to dislike her around the French toast. I guess in the beginning, as soon as this book was completely incoherent, I was annoyed with her. But I thought, listen, I'll give her some time. She's a kook. Then there was this French toast situation and the yelling at the flight attendant about dog poop and all this. I was like, I think she might be kind of a bad person. And then she's like, you know, just absolutely at the feet of Louis. And then she's absolutely at the feet of not only Woody Allen's work. She's not even separating the art from the artist. She's like, look at how much he loves his daughter wife.
She sees them one time and she's like, where are you guys going? And they're going to have a crab cake. And then he's like, okay, you can leave now. And she's like, after that, I realized they really are meant for each other. I'm like, everybody likes a crab cake. Everybody. They're in Newport, Rhode Island. What else is there to do but get a delicious crab cake?
You're in New England in the summertime and you think it's unique and special to share a crab cake with someone?
I kinged them for a crab cake. I would ask a stranger on the bus for half their crab cake. It doesn't mean I love them. It doesn't mean we're soulmates. It means I have boundary problems.
And if that person had ever been the adopted daughter of my lover, I would say this crab cake is strictly platonic.
We're going splitsies.
I'll pay my share, thank you very much, and we won't make eye contact. So then she writes a chapter about her dog, which I started off on board for, but then she starts talking about her ex-boyfriend, who is Ryan Adams. Parker fucking Posey, the only thing she likes is a sex offender.
At least she has something.
I can't believe that this whole book, she's been 100 pages just boring me to tears. And then she was like, okay, let me give you some actual name drops, some actual stories. Here are the harassers I love. I mean, he was in a band when Phoebe Bridgers was born.
Also in this chapter about her dog, I guess her dog somehow gets a bad rap as a difficult dog to have on set. And I can only imagine that's dead true.
I mean, if she's gnashing her fangs and bringing someone to tears,
then what's the dog doing? They called her a devil dog, and to this day, people say that they heard she was mean, and it's clear that she's not and wasn't. Lena Dunham told me that they called her dog a devil dog, too. Okay, actually, Lena Dunham called her dog a devil dog because she was
explaining why she was rehoming her dog.
It's so funny to be like, ugh, they said the same thing about my dog that I told them.
Lena Dunham, a notoriously bad dog owner. I think that there are like petitions on the internet to never let Lena Dunham adopt another dog.
I'd wait around late nights for my rock star boyfriend to come home while he was out.
Dating teenagers.
Making music. Ryan Adams.
This book is just so crazy because there's so few sentences to even grab onto. And all of those sentences that like make sense are about her defending evil men.
Then she has a whole chapter about a different kind of yoga.
Or holding shit in her hands. And by shit, I mean like feces.
The Mysore practice of yoga. I'm not going to really walk you guys through it. You can look into it on your own.
She explains the sun salutation with photos.
She also seems to have a really different idea of New York and LA than I have. She also says New York is competitive and harsh and it's not the same anymore. Everyone wants something. Everyone has to be so smart or interesting or fascinating. Yeah, that's new. New York used to be a real chill place.
Yeah, nobody's just sitting next to you talking about flooding a bathtub anymore.
And then she talks about how much she hates LA. She can always guarantee you that she'll throw up when she's out there. She's a real pukey girl, which normally I'd relate to, but hers has a sinisterness.
Yeah.
Mine is like, I'm always just eating too much cotton candy and then getting on a whirly-turly ride and I'm puking. She's always like, I'm so upset that I haven't gotten exactly what I feel I'm entitled to that I'm going to puke in your face.
Can I tell you guys, we saw a man eating cotton candy on the train the other day. It was so crazy.
Ashley couldn't get over it.
I just feel like to watch someone sitting there just munching on threads of sugar was so absurd to me.
It feels porous for the subway. And I don't like it when people are like, you can't eat on the subway because sometimes you just have one more little bite of something and you
sometimes
have to
you have one more. He was fully just like piecing and dissolving sugar.
Ashley was like, I'd rather get pushed on those subway tracks than have to see that again.
It was just so jarring. We used to be a society. Where did he get it? It was like a single grown man. Was he at the circus alone?
It was the middle of a weekday.
I mean, I guess like you have a little cotton candy left coming back from a Knicks game. Like, where was he eating cotton candy from?
If it's not a Knicks game, we can't think of a second thing.
I can't think of a first thing. That was just a guess, but I don't even think they probably have cotton candy.
Maybe he does like sound tech.
At the circus?
At Madison Square Garden. And
they like were testing out the cotton candy machine and they said, take this.
No, but you have to get to a restaurant quite early to set up. And he said, well, you're back there.
Okay. As someone who's actually spun cotton before, candy, you really don't turn on the machine early. You think I've never had a job working child's birthday parties, doing cotton candy and face paint? Have you met me?
If you guys don't know, Ashley and I have a long-standing problem where I'll say something that I think and she'll go, I actually know that that's not true because I worked that job. And it'll be things like dolphin trainer. And I'll be like,
I was never a dolphin trainer.
But she's like, she was a horseback riding camp counselor. And I'm like, you couldn't get on a horse right now.
Yes, I could. I couldn't get off, but I couldn't get on.
A horse does not have respect for you. I know that for sure.
No, we actually have a lot in common. Wobbly legs.
Horses are not wobbly. They're like famously strong.
Okay, well then how come if they fall down once, they like get axed?
Okay, sorry. Anyway,
so she has this bit that she does when she goes to LA where when she's driving, she'll roll down the window and scream, I'm a vegan at people. And she goes, I'm always doing this. It's like what my parents do. We always do silly stuff.
She has this really funny thing she does that's like the most LA thing I've ever seen in somebody talking shit about LA. Where she's like, oh my God, the vegans, they're so crazy. Like everyone's talking about food all the time. She goes, I come from too many ranch hands. I don't eat meat all that much. I make a lot of soups and salads. But too much food talk starves a good conversation. Kale isn't as popular as it used to be, and I don't know why that is. It's so funny to be like, ugh, vegans. Anyway, all I eat is soup and salad. Nothing will ever top Selma Blair's anorexia, though.
Oh my God, mustard and leaves from
She's
the
like,
outdoors.
Me and my toddler like to go pluck our own piece of rutabaga. Arugula. And we'll dip it in just maybe some lemon juice. And we like to eat it with our hands, and that's how we get close to nature. And I'm like, okay, you are actually missing like 2,000 more calories.
What if I invited you over to my house and you said, I'm hungry, do you have anything to eat? And I said, well, there's plants outside.
One time she met somebody, he goes, we've met before. She goes, when? And he goes, you got out of your car and yelled at me and asked if I was a vegan. And I'm like, wow, you're so crazy, Parker.
She talks about having to move apartments and how it's very emotional to leave a place behind. And she moves in with like her friend's mom.
Who has a brownstone.
Yeah.
And guess what she does immediately?
She floods the bathtub and ruins all of her art. And this woman is kind of devastated. And Parker like calls her dad and is like, she was really freaking out about her art.
Yeah. And she's like, what? We can like pay for it and replace it. And she's like, it's irreplaceable. It's like masks I got in Africa and theater tickets and paintings and antiques. And she's like, what are you, an idiot? And she's like, I just do this a lot where I do this thing where she's like, I don't know, my old bathtub was like louder. Parker, this isn't like a cute thing you do. You can't just constantly be causing water damage. I hate that about you.
Ruining your landlord's art is not fun or funny. It's something you should feel deep shame about. It's crazy that earlier in the book, she talks about feeling shame. And I'm like, where?
It's so funny because the landlady goes, I don't know if you'll even live here next summer. And she's like, I guess we were not a good fit. I'm like, who's a good fit? Who likes their shit getting ruined because you like have some weird bath mental illness? Okay, so then she does another Woody Allen movie.
So this is when she gets back to talking about the actual process of working with Woody Allen and how working with him was like winning a game of roulette. You never know how Hollywood is going to go. Sometimes you're in the right place at the right time. And luckily, someone was in the right place to get her a meeting with his casting director. And now she's working with Woody Allen. And it's hard because he's not very emotive. And she never knows when she's doing a good job.
This is actually very funny feedback from Woody Allen. At one point, he said I was a terrific actress and a complicated woman, but that he didn't want to see any of that in this movie. Can I tell you? And in this book, Woody Allen, I wish you had edited this book.
And then she talks about how just like brilliantly funny he is. And even when he's not trying to be funny, he'll say stuff that's just so funny. She references, his allegations again. This was in 2014 when the accusation scandal wasn't as hot in the climate of culture, but I read articles online about the case and can relate to all the players in the story. I wonder if it will be staged as an opera in 50 years.
Yeah, you already said that. You already said that in your first defense of him. She's like, will social media be seen as the peanut gallery or an oracle?
They're not predicting the future. They're just reacting to the actual allegations. Oracles aren't like, oh, in my third eye, I'm seeing that you definitely molested that girl because she said so on camera and then many times since.
Okay, and then we hear the story about the shit. I took it and went upstairs to wrap it in one of my granny's handkerchiefs, which I kept in the top drawer of my chifforobe. I kept it and revisited it like a cherished relic with all my love in my heart. And then she's like, when I was a little girl, I rubbed shit all over my face. My dad got so mad. That was the first time I experienced being shamed for my art. And I was like, yeah, that's right.
That's disgusting.
There's a little bit of shame that's correct. And it's like for health reasons.
Okay, and now we are at page 249, and she finally gets to Christopher Guest and working on Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show.
Basically, she was like, I didn't think it was funny when I started, and I didn't get him, and I didn't like the improv.
She didn't like Spinal Tap. She feels that as an improviser, she should have been paid as a writer as well.
I don't know. She likes that people thought it was funny.
She does think that Chris is like a good comedic director and that he inspires a lot of humor in other people. Like when you're around him, you just are funnier and he just notices funny stuff. I'll tell you what, that's a really funny movie.
She's always believed in UFOs. And because of that, she like called up the Coneheads director and was like, make me a Conehead. And then she's like, give my Conehead some friends. So she brought her friends on it.
I can't believe there was more about being in like a Louis C.K. web series than there was about Best in Show.
She ended up in something called, what is it? Lost in Space, which I don't know if that was big when this book came out, but it gets like 3 chapters in a row.
Yeah.
She's like, and thanks to Coneheads, I got to do Lost in Space. And I'm like, was that successful?
The revival, not original, that she watched when she was a kid.
Oh, and then she's a whole chapter about how to throw a pot, like out of clay.
She started learning about pottery. And so she explains to you.
Oh, I forgot about the story in the pottery thing.
Oh my God. Okay. So she explains to you in words, like the process of making pottery. And then she joins this pottery co-op collective, Sitch, where like everyone is a part of this collective and they
all pitch in and clean up.
They have chores that they're assigned. And if you don't want to do your chores, you can pay a fee. And one time someone comes up to her and is like, hey, you never do any chores. And she was like, but I pay the fee.
She said, you haven't been doing your duties. She said, I know. I said, I've been focusing and, meditating. I paid the fee. So she breathed in deeply through her nose and nodded to herself. Well, I just don't think that you want other people to think that you think you're special. I sighed and said, but I am. I'm famous. She blinked a few times. Okay, I said, trying to explain it. Say I'm standing looking at vegetables in the grocery store, holding a bag of carrots, and someone taps me on the shoulder and scares the crap out of me and then says she's a fan. That's not an average day at the grocery store. She took in what I had to say and went about her duties and left me my centering. Every person is unique and one of a kind, and it's that way intentionally. Every person evokes an emotion inside of you. What did you just tell us? And like, are you kidding?
I can't tell if
I guess
she's
you're
kidding.
not kidding because you weren't helping out. To be like, oh, sorry, I didn't do chores because I'm like in the middle of throwing pots. Yeah, everybody at ceramics is doing that.
She doesn't say anything likable. Ever.
Then she talks about a scene in Sleepless in Seattle she got cut out of.
And then she talks about being mentored by Nora Ephron. And, Nora has some smart things to say. There are two parts to feelings, having them and acting on them. And then she also says this, you'll always feel the same. You'll just keep getting older. This was stunning news to me since I'd had this fantasy that after I turned 30, I'd become Mariska Hargitay or another womanly type woman instead of the impish woman child I'll remain forever. Can I say, I think I've been really hard on short people in my life, and watching the way it affects like Anna Kendrick and Parker Posey, I think like the mental struggle is enough, and I'll stop being mean to you guys. The fact that like small women are like, I'm a baby and that makes me insufferable.
The only way to fix it is to have a baby and then to constantly be like, look, me and my baby are the same size. I'm in her stroller. Oh my God, look, she's 4, but I'm wearing her pajamas.
But I did think this was good advice. Like, you'll always feel the same. You just keep getting older. And I do think we know so many people who expect like change and growth to happen to them instead of actively working towards change and growth. And I don't agree that you'll always be the same. But if you never try to be different, you'll always be the same.
Yeah,
like,
you can stay mature till you die.
Yeah, like it will never happen to you.
Then she has a whole chapter about being a twin and how like, she's like, oh my God, did you remember I was a twin? And then she talks about this random person she met and how they had similar birthdays and they both had siblings. She's like, I have a twin brother. And he's like, I have a sister. And then they're like, we're twins.
And then she also has a twin in Vancouver who has like the same haircut as her. And then she's doing another yoga class and she starts to let go of all that had been overwhelming. She starts sobbing. The past few years had been a meltdown of my Porsche and everything that I couldn't control and the strangeness of culture. And to quote Dave Chappelle, awesome. When has America ever given a fuck about how anyone feels inside? The detours are happening everywhere, all over the world. The weather, for instance, easily causing turmoil and taking over the peace of mind of absolutely everybody, and the guns. What's that Lou Reed song where he says that people don't act rational? They think they're on TV. I guess I feel like it's so interesting that she feels overwhelmed by the ills of society because she is one of the ills. Like, she acts in such a selfish and annoying way all the time. It's so shocking to me that she's someone who's like, we have to like build a community.
How do I land something? Come here. That's how it ends. I don't know what that has to do with. I guess that's like the plane thing, but I still don't get it. Anyway, Parker Posey, I wish you had stayed silent. Anyway, we're excited to see her on White Lotus. We'll be talking about White Lotus on the podcast, the Patreon.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch the new Seas of White Lotus.
I will say I just saw her in a movie called like Esther or something. It was like an old lady's name.
Oh, Tammy. No. Tanya?
No.
You loved that movie.
I really liked it. And I thought she was great in it, but she plays like a wacky woman who's like an overbearing therapist mom.
I mean, Best in Show is one of my favorite movies. Let me know if you want my brother to voice note in doing the nuts scene from Best in Show on the Patreon.
Let us know.
If you want that hashtag, yes, we'd love to see Scotty do that nuts scene from Best in Show.
Scotty IE or Scotty Y?
With a Y.
And Ashley, who is the best in show this week?
Oh my God, 5 out of 5 little pause for our 5-star wormies.